What's up guys, TrippedUp here, back at it again with another sitting in front of the microphone and talking video. And today, as you can see by the title, we're talking about why meta does not matter in Brawlhalla. So, what made me decide to talk about this topic now? Because as we all know, these discussion videos are always fueled by something, and trust me, this time is no exception. If you follow the pro Brawlhalla scene, you know that just last weekend, the Summer Royale concluded, and in it, we had some pretty interesting results. Going into the Royale, most people had either Sandstorm or Godly pegged to be the winner, but in the end, it was Kaina who took both of them down and won the whole thing. But that wasn't even the most surprising part. What was most shocking was Kaina's pick, Teros. Now keep in mind, in the current day meta, Axe and Hammer are regarded to be the worst weapons in 1v1s, and yet, Kaina used both of them to take down the best players in the game. Now, following the tournament, I've seen a lot of people say that Axe and Hammer are still really bad and that Kaina is just quote-unquote better, but I think we're all missing the point here. First of all, if you think Kaina is the only person who could have played Axe or Hammer and won the tournament, you're wrong. I mean, sure, we can all agree that Kaina was very good. He was absolutely on fire. The skill difference was definitely there. But he's not the only person that could have picked up those weapons and won. If people had given it a shot beforehand, there most definitely would have been someone playing Hammer or Axe besides him. To further cement that idea, I have seen so many people pick up Hammer and Axe and even Teros in the past couple days because of Kaina. I even took it upon myself to start learning Hammer even though it was my worst weapon by far, and I've been having a lot of fun with it so far. As you can see by this gameplay, it's not exactly the most refined Hammer out there, but I'm getting there. I've even seen Axe and Hammer start to rise in some people's 1v1s tier lists, but part of that is because of another weapon, which I'll get to in a second. So, how did this happen? How did someone pick up what was regarded to be the two worst weapons in the meta and destroy the best players in the game with them? I'll tell you exactly how. Meta doesn't matter. I've probably said this 100 times, but let's make that 101 when I say every legend can win in Brawlhalla. Every weapon can win in Brawlhalla. It does not matter what you play, you can win and you can beat anyone with those weapons. Is that to say that every single weapon is the same as far as balance goes? Of course not. There are still always going to be weapons that are better than others in the game. But that doesn't mean you can't use the low tier weapons to beat the high tier ones. Kaina demonstrated that perfectly when he picked two of the low tier weapons, being Hammer and Axe, and beat some of the high tier weapons, such as Scythe and Spear. Speaking of Spear, let's talk about that for a second. Now, it comes at no surprise that I believe Spear to be the best weapon in the game right now, as most people believe as well. But it hasn't been at that top spot for very long. So, where was it beforehand? Well, for some people, it was actually more towards the bottom. Back in 2022, I remember seeing a couple tier lists that had Spear towards the bottom 3. But looking back on Twitter, most of them had Spear at about mid-range. So, what changed about Spear to make it go from this mid-tier weapon to the absolute best in the entire game? Nothing. That's right, it may come at your surprise, but nothing changed about Spear in that time. There were no buffs, no changes, nothing. People just started to play the weapon more. I believe that exact same thing is about to start happening to Hammer. Maybe not Axe, but definitely Hammer. Now, of course, Hammer has been buffed continuously in the past couple of patches. However, I don't believe that's enough to make the weapon go from the absolute worst to beating the top tier players that quickly. And of course, there's also the factor of the Blasters nerf. Yes, I've seen your Twitter posts. You Blaster mains of the past couple of days have been going absolutely insane, claiming that Blasters is now the absolute worst weapon in the entire game, and that it's practically unplayable, and that you're quitting Blasters, and blah 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 blah. But, in an ironic twist of fate, I've actually seen more Blaster players in the past couple days than I did before the nerfs. So that's strange, right? What's even stranger is when I queued the biggest Blasters defender in the game, Noto Lata, in Experimental, and he absolutely wiped the floor with me. And what was he playing? That's right, Blasters. Now, of course, there's also the factor that Noto Lata is like a 2600 peak player, but, you know, we don't have to talk about that. Oh yeah, by the way, Noto, if you happen to be watching this right now, I mean absolutely no disrespect, but yeah, you're the most biased Blasters main I've ever seen, and that's just straight up a fact. Now, the question has to be asked, what did they do to Blasters to constitute calling them the worst weapon in the meta? Well, let's see here. They lowered the damage on Enlight. Okay. They made one of the most unpunishable and instantaneous moves in the game, Sidelight, a little bit more punishable and less instantaneous. Okay. They decreased the hitbox on one of the most spammable moves in the entire game, which is Blaster's Nair. Okay, fair. And they slightly decreased the force on Blaster's recovery. And those are the changes that supposedly make Blasters now the worst weapon in 1v1s. Yeah. Now don't get me wrong, compared to all the other weapons nerfs, these are actually pretty harsh. But were they deserved? Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, before the nerfs, Blasters was a literal wall of hitboxes that you could not get past if the player knew what they were doing. So in the end, were Blasters the recipient of some pretty harsh nerfs? Yeah. But does that mean that they aren't playable and won't win anymore? Absolutely not, because that goes against everything I've been talking about this whole video. Everything is winnable, even if they do get nerfed. When the next big tournament rolls around, which I assume would be Autumn's, I guarantee you there will still be Blasters players that reach the top levels. Now, I know at least one of you are like, well, what about Cannon? What about Greatsword? Neither of those weapons are played at the top level of tournaments, so what's your excuse for that? If you ask me, it's the exact reason you didn't see people playing Hammer or Axe just a little bit ago. It's because everyone has this stigma in their mind that these weapons are unplayable and they shouldn't try them out. All it takes is one really good player to completely destroy the opposition with one of these weapons, and all of a sudden, everyone's going to be playing it, just like what would happen with Taros, Hammer, and Axe. I know for certain that the same thing would happen with Cannon or Greatsword. Like seriously, I've seen some people that are absolute demons on these weapons, and I know that if someone even better than them picked it up, it would be over. So, what does this mean for you? Should you now start playing Taros just because kinda won with them? Well, it doesn't hurt to give it a shot, that's for sure. The main takeaway here is that you shouldn't cling to the meta to try and get you wins. A lot of people started playing Spear just because it was all of a sudden the best weapon in the game, and while that's true, that doesn't mean that other weapons can't succeed. So, if you're a quote-unquote meta slave that only plays the top meta weapons, I suggest you take a step back and maybe try one of those non-meta weapons. Sure, you may find that, hey, this isn't for me, and those meta weapons are actually the ones I want to play, and if so, that's completely fine. But maybe, just maybe, you'll find that one of those non-meta weapons are actually better for you. I mean, look at me for example. I was a Spear main for years, but all of a sudden, when Spear became the best weapon, I decided to try some other weapons. So I went from Mirage, to Wushang, to Tezca, and now I'm playing Core of all things. I also now have a deep resentment of Spear. But you know, who doesn't? So yeah, that's why meta does not matter in Brawlhalla. Anyways, that's about it for today's video. If you're a regular viewer of the channel, and you're wondering where my normal Brawlhalla videos are, don't worry, next week is going to be a normal, well-edited video of Brawlhalla, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.